Ian Cunningham, GM. Kevin Stefanski, head coach. Matt Ryan, president of football operations. The front office is set, and now it's time to start thinking about roster construction. Welcome in, Falcons fans, to Falcons Today by Chat Sports. My name is Moose. Today's going to be a long episode. I'm going to give you my top 10 free agent targets for the Dirty Birds. So you're going to have to lock in here for a minute because I'm going to be talking non-stop. You're going to get non-stop Moose on this episode. I hope you're ready for it. And you're going to get non-stop Moose all off season long. The latest news and rumors surrounding your Dirty Birds, NFL free agency coverage, NFL draft content, latest trade buzz, and if you're not subscribed, you can't see any of it. It's free. It'll always be free. We'll never charge you anything. So do me a favor, smash that subscribe button and help us get to 51,000 subscribers. By the way, this is my list, not a list I compiled from ESPN or any other online sources. This is just Moose being Moose, talking about ball and what he knows about ball, which, granted, is very little. So I'll just throw out my top 10 guys that I believe would fit the Atlanta Falcons in 2026. With that being said, let's start the list. Number 10, Sheldon Rankins, defensive tackle for the Houston Texans. We've talked all off season long and season long about how much better the Falcons' defensive line would be if they had someone alongside Brandon Dorlus to kind of plug up that interior defensive line. And Sheldon Rankins, while he might not be an elite run stuffer, is a good run stuffer, and he is good at getting after the quarterback. This last year, he had a pretty productive season. 5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 9 quarterback hits. He's not somebody that is going to, completely change the framework of your defensive line, but he's also an excellent 3-tech defensive tackle. He would do very nicely with Brandon Dorlus and Zach Harrison. Think about it. If you would switch up your defensive packages, and you wanted to drop back 8 in coverage, you could go with Dorlus, you could go with Harrison, and you could go with Rankins as your 3-tech in like a cover 2 shell, and then drop back everybody else. Hopefully you get home with 3 just like that. Also, I think it's important to note that we're losing a guy like David Onyemata, who is not a defensive tackle, but a defensive lineman. So there is an opening on the defensive line for somebody in free agency to fill that role. And I do believe that defensive tackle, something that we've talked about nonstop, about the Atlanta Falcons getting in either the free agency or in the draft. Let's go to number 9, Nashon Wright. We just talked about him on the channel earlier this week. Nashon Wright from the Chicago Bears, a cornerback. Only spent 1 year with Chicago, but he played his ass off. 6'4", 185 pounds. He's long, he's lengthy, he's fast, and he's a boom or bust corner. Biggest headline you could have over Nashon Wright's name. Great ball hawk skills. Somebody that jumps routes with ease. But because he plays so aggressively, he also gives up a lot of big plays. And you could look at that and go, well, we don't need someone like that. We need a lockdown corner. Well, unless you're drafting one, you're not going to go out and find any lockdown corners. Really, in free agency, once in a blue moon, they might appear. But most of the time, NFL franchises lock down corner because it is a premium position. I also think this is a great Mike Hughes replacement. Mike Hughes is old, like dust. And it's time for him to kind of move on. So, dust, it's a little harsh. I was being a little rude there, but you guys get my point. It's time to move on from Mike Hughes. I'd go with Nashon Wright as a nice cheap option on the opposite side of A.J. Terrell. Then coming up, wait a minute, Moosey. What do you got there? A quarterback? Yeah, but not to start. I would not bring in Joe Flacco to start over Michael Penix Jr. I would bring him in as a savvy, veteran, cheap option. If Kirk is gone, which we all believe he will, and Penix is your starter, you could bring in a veteran backup who knows Stefanski's offense by heart. Not only did he play under Stefanski once, he played under Stefanski twice with the Cleveland Browns. So, Joe Flacco is one of those players, super smart, super old, but also had a pretty productive 2025 season. For a guy who's 40-plus years old, Flacco still is a pretty viable option. He throws a lot of picks, but he also throws for a lot of yards. And remember, 60% completion percentage, that wasn't very good. But he also only played a handful of games this year and threw for 2,400 yards. So there are a lot worse veteran options that you could do with Joe Flacco. And the main reason I have him on this list at number 8 is because he knows Kevin Stefanski's offense better than any single veteran on this entire list. So should the Falcons add a quarterback, I think is the main question I want to ask you. It doesn't have to be Joe Flacco. Should they add a quarterback, whether that be in free agency or in the draft? Type your Y for yes, type your N for no. I think it's almost a guarantee that you have to bring in at least one quarterback to back up injury-prone Michael Penix Jr. Number 7, first wide receiver on the list. Wan'Dale Robinson from the New York Football Giants. 5'8", very small frame, but with Malik Neighbors out, had an excellent season, a breakout season with 92 receptions, over 1,000 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Now, Wan'Dale's interesting because despite his small frame, he works really, really well in the slot and could be kind of like that Wes Welker type. He had 140 targets this year, and like I said, 92 receptions, and that was with a combination of Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson and Jackson Dart. So he had a hodgepodge of quarterbacks throwing to him. If you gave him a little bit more uniformity, I think you could see a pretty similar season to what you got this year. Now, he wouldn't have 92 receptions because he was the number 1 at one point for the New York Football Giants. That title would go to Drake London. But could he get somewhere between 50 and 60 receptions, 800 to 900 yards, and 6 touchdowns? Yeah, I absolutely think so. He's a pure slot, something the Falcons have not had since the releasing of Ray McCloud. So if you wanted to go out and get a guy that is a clear and obvious upgrade to Ray, this would be your guy, and he's significantly cheaper than a guy like Alec Pierce or George Pickens. So this is a cheaper option on the free agency market. Again, he's kind of a niche wide receiver because he can really only play out of the slot, but despite that, still a pretty good option. And we have our first Falcon hitting the list. You'll notice this because technically they are free agents. So I'm going with Kyle Pitts. Now, Kyle Pitts, we don't need to talk too much in detail. You guys know what Kyle Pitts is all about. Had one of the best seasons of his career, and not because he just balled out from start to finish, but that last 5-game stretch that he had with Kirk was incredible. Notably against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where he had 10 receptions for 166 yards and 3 touchdowns. It was by far one of the greatest tight end performances I think I've ever seen. But I also think this comes with a caveat. This is a franchise tag move for Atlanta. I'm still team franchise tag, although it might not happen. I would do this in a heartbeat if I'm the Dirty Birds. And maybe there's a tag and trade in it for Kyle Pitts if he really did want to explore another team. You have him for the first half of the season. You trade him off. You get some draft capital. Everybody's happy. But again, taking a look at his numbers, very, very good, very solid. 88 receptions, 900 yards, 5 touchdowns, an average 10.5. The problem with Pitts is, and you guys know this, he disappears for chunks at a time. He'll have incredible quarters, and then he'll just fall off the face of the earth, like just all over the map. So Pitts seems like one of those players, if he can find a consistent rapport with his quarterback, which seems to be Kirk Cousins. Now we don't think Kirk's coming back. Michael Penix Jr. clearly, and they just don't gel as well as Kirk and Pitts did. So who knows? Maybe that has something to do with it as well. Maybe Kyle Pitts explores free agency, but I would bring Kyle Pitts back on a franchise tag. Next 5 free agents, my top 5 on this list, coming up here in just a little bit. Before that, got to tell you about my friends over at Prize Picks. The big game right around the corner, Seahawks versus Patriots. You do not want to miss any of the last-minute football action this football season. So you got to download Prize Picks, where you can get $50 instantly in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. They've got Flex Play now, where basically you can cash out your winnings if one of your picks doesn't hit, or Power Play, where you get a little extra incentive and a little extra cash by being a little bit more risky in your play. Speaking of lineups, it takes 30 seconds to make one. I made one right here for the big game. I've got Drake May on the max discount play, more than half a passing yard, JSN, and Ramondre Stevenson. So, do me a favor, download the app today, use code CLNS to get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it is good to be right. First top 5 candidate, Daquan Jones from Buffalo, another defensive tackle. This guy really is just a tree stump of a human being. He's 6'4", 320 pounds. He's a massive human being. And I have said I am okay with bringing in a player that maybe doesn't offer as much productivity in terms of the box score if he is a space eater. Sometimes that's all you need. If you just have someone that takes up space, they'll naturally fall into tackles because they quite literally just have a gigantic wingspan, and they take up a lot of that space. And Daquan Jones kind of fills out that role. He only had 22 tackles, 3 for loss, and 3 sacks, but he did have 8 quarterback hits. He can do both. He can stop the run. He can get after the quarterback, which is not something that we necessarily need right now. But do we need more bodies on the defensive line? Yes. Do we want to at least gamble on a draft pick? Maybe not. That's where you could go out and pay a guy like Jones, who, by the way, doesn't miss tackles. One of the highlights and the hallmarks of his game is he's a savvy veteran that never, ever misses. He's got a missed tackle percentage of 4.3%. For context, there are guys out there in the cornerback, position that are upwards of 23% in their missed tackle percentage. So if he's at 4.3, the dude never misses. So I would take Daquan Jones if he wanted to come to the Dirty Birds. My number 4, Romeo Doubs from Green Bay. Doubs is an interesting wide receiver. He's versatile, but he's not really amazing at any one spot. He's not amazing out of the slot. He's not a great outside threat, and he's not great in motion or in any creative packages. He's just kind of pretty good everywhere, which is, again, kind of what the Atlanta Falcons need. You've got Drake London, who specializes in contested catches, can go up and make acrobatic-type catches as well, and Doubs really doesn't do that. He had one really awesome one against the Chicago Bears, one-handed grab, and you can see his helmet from a mile away because he always wears that Guardian cap. But last year, probably one of the better ones of his career, 55 receptions, 724 yards, 6 touchdowns. I do think he's a prime candidate to go back to Green Bay. But, I mean, it could work if you wanted to pay him a little bit of money. Again, this is not a home run splash hit. This is just instantly making your wide receiver room better. He's a versatile wide receiver. You can line him up pretty much everywhere. He's done everything for the Green Bay Packers. He's lined up out wide. He's lined up in the slot. You put him in motion. You put him even in the backfield sometimes. So Doubs is one of those players I could see fitting on pretty much any team, but he won't make like a massive impact to any one team, if that makes sense. My third, another Falcon, Tyler Allgeier. Yes, I want Tyler Allgeier back. I'll scream it from the rooftops. Why? The dude just finds the end zone. I know Bijan is our number 1. He'll continue to be our number 1 until basically the end of his career. But Allgeier is still a really, really good Falcon. 143 carries, 514 yards, 8 touchdowns last year. I think he's excellent. And he's a bowling ball compared to Bijan's fastball. And if we compare him to a guy like, I don't know, Nick Chubb, who has played underneath Kevin Stefanski as well, these are pretty decent numbers, and Chubb was widely considered at one point to be one of the greatest backs in the NFL. Now, all the injuries have kind of caused him to, fall off a little bit, but these are very similar numbers. Tyler Allgeier is not one of those players that is ever going to be your bell cow back, but can you use him in short-yarded situations? Yeah, I think that's exactly what you use him for. And at times, he did a lot of that. You'd put him up in the pistol, and unfortunately, because the pistol is so predictable, offense or defenses knew when they were going to run, but he and Bijan are an elite combo. When there is creativity mixed into this, Tyler Allgeier is an excellent back. My only concern is that he's going to want to explore the market to be a number 1 somewhere else. That leads us to our final 2. George Pickens. Yes, I'm in on George Pickens for the Atlanta Falcons. He's a former Georgia player. Everybody knows that George Pickens is an elite talent. The numbers don't lie. Stop fooling yourself. I know the attitude problem. He's got, Stop. Like, we're willing to overlook some childish-like behavior if he's going to give you what he gave you this year in 2025. I'd be willing to deal with it. I don't know about you guys, but just look at the Falcons' wide receiver numbers from last year. It's Drake London, and then a 50-foot drop-off, and then Darnell Mooney and David Sills. Like, that's ass, guys. Darnell was injured. I get it. I'd rather have Pickens 10 times out of 10, twice on Sunday. And plus, he's already got the connection in Atlanta. He already has the connection in Georgia. He played at Athens. He was a dog. What's that coming down the track? You get my point. Like, the guy is unbelievable. He's strong. You can line him up anywhere. He's a good deep threat. He and Drake London would make one of the best combos in the NFL. And this is exactly why I'm making these types of videos. Because if you want the very best free agency coverage, if you want even my honest thoughts and opinions every single day, you got to be subbed. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Hit that sub button. Help us get to 51,000 before we unveil our number one free agency target. And Mr. Producer, if you could go back one on that so that we get a nice little reveal and push that through. Bingo! Number one on Moose's list. Da-da-da-da. Alec Pierce. God forbid a little white boy gets some motion here, but Alec Pierce is unreal, my friends. This is the very definition of splash play wide receiver. 21.3 yards per reception. There are no 3-yard curls. There are no 4-yard sticks. There's no 2-yard crossing routes over the middle of the field in the slot. This guy is go big or go home, and he's always go big. He just runs. His average depth of target is like 16 yards a throw. It's incredible. Pierce ranked second, by the way, in yards per reception in 2025. Technically, he was first if you're going by the amount of snaps that they took, but he definitely was number one in 2024. So first and kind of 1B, respectively, if you kind of take it for, you know what I'm saying. Pierce is awesome. I think he's going to have a huge market. He is going to have a huge market. There's going to be a lot of teams that are clamoring for a player like Alec Pierce. Now, he might get franchise tagged by the Colts. He might re-sign with the Colts. But I'm inclined to believe that he's going to test the waters. Him and his agent are just going to see who's going to offer the most money. And maybe that's the Colts. Maybe that's the Dirty Birds. If you liked my list and you made it to the very end of today's video, give me a grade. A, B, C, D, or F. I'm not one to toot my own horn. I think it's an A- list. It fills all the needs that the Atlanta Falcons need. We talked corner, we talked defensive tackle, we talked wide receiver, we talked a little tight end, we talked a little running back. So we kind of covered all of our bases. Either way, let me know down in the comment section down below. That's all I got for you today. Holy cow, that was a long one. You guys have been hearing me talk for what, 20 minutes now? Pretty close to 18 minutes? Yeah, it's a lot. All right, that's all I got for you, though. Falcons fans, rise up and be cool.